In this video, we're going to cover markups. You need to be logged in as an administrator in order to set or change markups. And once you are, you'll go ahead and click Admin and then go to Item Markups right here. Now notice we have kind of three markups here. These two right here are the defaults, default tier and web tier. Now the reason you're going to see two different defaults tiers in there is because the first one, that default tier, is the in-store pricing. So in other words, you would see that pricing when you're logged in, and that's so your salespeople can be logged in and show customers the pricing that they're going to be purchasing the products at. Now the web tier will control your pricing that is online. In other words, the pricing that someone who is coming to your site through Google or Bing or something like that is going to see. If they're separate, then you'll want to keep both tiers in there and go ahead and edit them and set them separately. If your in-store pricing and your web pricing are exactly the same, the easiest thing to do is just hit remove on the web tier, and then your in-store and your web pricing will all be controlled by the default tier, and that way you only have to remember to fix or change one tier and you're less likely to run into problems. Now don't worry, you can always add in the web tier again later. Now down here I have an example tier I put in. This is a contractor tier, and that's just because I wanted to kind of point out here that you can add in tiers that are specific for contractors, designers, or a wide variety of other trade accounts. When you're ready to set the pricing for a particular tier, for example, when I want to set my markups for my in-store pricing, I'm going to come over here to my default tier and click Edit. Now this is what a fresh tier looks like. You have your default markup. You have, right now we don't have any markup rows or specials rows, but we're going to be adding those in. Now if this is like a contractor tier or something like that, notice that you can actually come up here and change the name, and you would want to do that especially for your contractor or designer tiers, just so you can kind of keep straight what they are. Let me kind of explain the big picture here. With the default markup, you're going to take the most common markup that you use for this particular pricing tier, so in this case the in-store pricing, and you'll set that as the default. And then for anything that is not at that default markup, we can use markup rows and specials rows to get the pricing where it needs to be. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at what my most common markup is, and I've got some options in here. I can always hit custom markup though and type in a special markup. And just remember to save after you do that. And then for the markup rows, again, this is where we're going to set the markup for anything that is a different markup besides the default. So I'm going to click Add New Markup Row here, and on the new row that's appeared, I'm going to come over here and click Edit. Now the first thing I see is a list of all of the vendors that I have in the system. I can select one or hold Control and select more than one. If you've got a whole bunch of vendors at the same markup, let's say that I had 3 or 4 vendors that I wanted to set at a 2.2. It's best to put them all on the same markup row, so in other words, select all 3 of them at once. And again, I'm just holding Control. If you're on a Mac, you'd want to hold Command. And then once I've got those in there, I come over here, select whatever markup I want, or again, hit Custom Markup and type in a markup. After you do that, you want to remember to hit Save. Now you can see here it says Brands 3. If I forget what brands those are, I can hit Show Details to see right here the specific list of what I've got on that row. And then you could just continue to add in markup rows. Now let me show you something else here. You have categories. These are going to be your categories, subcategories, anything like that. You can set a markup to those. So for example, if you have home decor or furniture or light bulbs or something like that at a different markup, you just select the ones that you want and then set your markup to them. However, you can actually go in and select a particular vendor and then go in and also select a category at the same time. So here I have Stephen and Chris chandeliers. I would be setting a markup specifically to their chandeliers as opposed to all of Stephen and Chris or all chandeliers. If you scroll down past the categories and subcategories, you'll see the other types of things you can search by, like finishes, options, styles. If you ever want to set a markup to any of those, that is also an option. You can also set a markup to attributes. If you're not sure what our attributes are or how to use them, I recommend watching our video on item attributes. It's a very useful feature of XOLights that a lot of people have used to set markups or specials to specific items, and there's a number of other things you can do with attributes as well. Now I'm actually going to set this one just to chandeliers here, because I want to show you something else about the markup rows here. Now let's actually change the markup here. Now on one row I have 3 vendors, and on another row I have a markup for chandeliers. Where we kind of run into a conflict is those 3 vendors probably do have chandeliers. So what happens in that case is the priority on the markup rows comes into play. For the chandeliers, for those 3 brands that I have selected and set at a 2.2, because that row has a priority of 1, rather than getting the chandeliers markup, they'll get this first markup, the 2.2, because this row has a higher priority than this one. If I wanted all of the chandeliers to have a 2.0, even the ones that would be in the 3 brands here on this row, all I have to do is switch the priority on these rows and hit save. And now all chandeliers will be at a 2.0, even the ones that belong to these 3 brands. Now if you ever need to delete a row, all you do is check this little box here under the red X and hit save, and it will take off the row. Now here's what you need to remember about markups. As far as the priority, the markup rows will always take priority over the default. Now let's talk for a second about pricing policies. If you're unfamiliar with pricing policies, you should watch the videos on how to add and remove vendors, because that covers how to set the pricing policies for vendors as well. So if you have IMAP set as actual or one of those other pricing policies set as actual, that will override any of the markups you set here every time. But it's important to remember that many vendors don't have IMAP or UMAP for every single item. A lot of times there will be a handful of items that don't have any sort of special pricing policy attached to it, and a lot of times your default markup is going to catch that. But of course you could set up a markup row to apply a markup to anything that's not going to be hit by setting a pricing policy as actual. Now the other thing that you can do with your pricing policies, of course, is set them as minimum. If you have your pricing policy set as minimum, whatever your markup rows are, or in the case that you don't have a markup row for that particular vendor, whatever your default markup is, will be what sets the price for that vendor, unless you have set your markups below the vendor's pricing policy, in which case the system will prevent you from doing that and bump it back up to the pricing policy, and that is to keep you from getting in trouble with the vendor. So that is the order of priority. Pricing policy set as actual are going to have the first priority. Then markups, as long as they don't violate the vendor's pricing policies. And then finally the default markup is the one that's kind of acts as a catch-all. The other thing that you can do here is add in a specials row. And specials rows are different from markups in the fact that they use discounts instead of markups. Now, specials rows are very similar to markups, but the biggest difference is that they use discounts instead. So if I click at it, you can really see this is the same list. There's not really any difference here. It works almost exactly the same as it does on the markups row, with one exception, and that's if you have a specials row and you don't have anything selected, it actually selects everything, the case that you're having a store-wide sale. So let me show you real quick. You put in your discount amount here. You can set it as a dollar amount or a percentage. And then you kind of choose how you want that to appear. So you have red line, highlight, and promo code. So red line and highlight are things that would affect how items appear in the catalog. And this help button has a picture of that. So I want to show you that real quick here. This is what the red line looks like. It's a red slash through the original price, then it shows you the discounted price and tells you how much you're saving. The highlight just turns the background yellow, but the idea is that if you have just a handful of items or maybe a small group of items with a highlight on them, they're going to pop and show up really well against the other items that typically just have a white background. One thing that you need to be aware of is it does keep in mind the pricing policies. So if you have IMAP as actual set for a vendor and try to apply a discount to it, you're not going to see a discount because you're already as low as you can go. If you put in, say, a 20% discount, but you only have about 10% you can go down before you hit one of those pricing policies like IMAP, it will only take the 10% off and stop there. And again, that is to keep you from getting in trouble with the vendor. Let's talk about the promo code real quick here. The promo code allows you to create a code, and you just type in what you want the code to be. So if this is something that is for my in-store pricing, then it would typically be brought in by the customer, and the sales rep would apply that to the order. If this is something that you have set on your web pricing, then the customer can put that in themselves in the shopping cart. And really it's up to you though to do the advertising, whatever marketing you need to get that promo code out to your customer base. With the specials rows, again, you can have as many as you need to get your pricing where you need it. And the priorities are going to work the same way they do on the markup rows. And then just like we were talking about with the markups, in order to remove a row, you just check this little box here and hit save. If you hit return, it will take you back to the first page that you see with the markup settings, where you have all of your different pricing tiers. Now, a quick word about the standard markup amounts. Let me just show you. If you have a markup that you use quite a bit, you just put it in here, and then make sure that you remember to come over here and set that as the actual markup. So this is where you tell the system how much you're marking it up, and this is really just what appears in the drop down that you'll be seeing. And then notice it tells you how much of a margin that is. I know some people like to set their pricing based on margin rather than on a multiplier. You can actually come in here and set a margin, and then you can see what that would be. And so if you prefer to use the margin in the name of the markup there, you can do that as well. It's fine either way, it just depends on your personal preference. Just remember to hit save markups when you add in something new. And then when you go into your tiers and you look at this drop down, you'll see any of the ones that you've added under the standard markups in this drop down. So it just allows you to customize this drop down with the markups that you use the most frequently, or to have the names display in a way that is more consistent with the way that you do business. So that's really how you do markups in XOLites. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to client services at xolites.com, or to refer to any of the other training resources that we have here. And as always, thanks for listening and have a great day.